We're back. It's time for another edition of the Carolina Insider. So glad to be back with you. My name is Jones Angell, along with Adam Lucas. And Adam, we didn't mess it up so badly in the spring that they wouldn't invite us back. We have made our way back here on a Thursday.
You can always get more opportunities when there's nothing else going on and there's no other content. Put Jones and Adam back up there.
So we will be here every week with you for the foreseeable future, every Thursday afternoon, discussing hot topics around Carolina athletics. We'll have guests. We'll be going through some fun social stuff as well. And Adam, of course, topic number one right now on everybody's mind is football. Carolina is still on track to kick off on September 12th against Syracuse, and the Heels chugging along. In fact, had their first scrimmage earlier this week.
This is usually such an exciting time of year as you're starting to get geared up for football and you're counting the days until the game. This year it's a little different because you're counting the days until you hope there's a game, and it looks like, as of right now, knock on wood, Carolina's on track.
So the Tar Heels actually had their first scrimmage of this preseason camp on Tuesday of this week. Mack Brown met with the media on Wednesday after reviewing the tape, talked about a lot of things, including his confidence level that Carolina would indeed be kicking off against Syracuse on September 12th.
I do really like what the presidents and chancellors have done in the ACC. They have said we're moving forward. And we're going to play basically as long as it's safe. And I've told our players and coaches that if any time they come back to us and tell us it's not safe, then we wouldn't want to play. So, but as far as I can tell, moving forward right now, we're planning on playing. I don't think anything's 100% JB this year. 2020 is the year that everything that's 100% changes in about an hour and a half. So, but I do think that right now everybody is feeling comfortable, the most comfortable we felt that we will have a football season this fall.
Adam, on the field for the Tar Heels on Tuesday, the number one thing that stood out was Carolina's improved depth. And that was something that Mack Brown talked a lot about last season, about how he felt like, particularly early in the year, Carolina had to play too many guys too often, too many snaps for the starters or the top one or two reserves on offense and defense. And boy, from watching that scrimmage on Tuesday, it's a dramatic difference. And I think some of that is just Carolina has improved its depth through recruiting. And some of that's a necessity because with the COVID testing that will be going on, you may find out just the day before a game that a certain amount of players aren't available. And so you have to be deeper this year.
And I think Carolina feels really good about the linebackers, feels really good about the secondary. Got a bushel load of wide receivers who are all capable of making big plays in an ACC football game. Concern, if there is any, maybe on the offensive line and the defensive line, two areas where Carolina would like to develop some more bodies because you know you're going to need more than just your starters at those two position groups.
By the way, our show today brought to you by our friends at Wells Fargo, and when communities need help, Wells Fargo is here for that help. Okay, somebody who has been helping a lot is Bubba Cunningham. Bubba, the athletic director here at Carolina, has so many things on his plate. And Adam, of course, the pandemic is number one, but there are plenty of things that Bubba's juggling. Our guest, Bubba Cunningham, in just a minute, that he's juggling right now.
What a job Bubba Cunningham has had to tackle over these last 5 or 6 months, doing all sorts of things that he probably never thought he would have to do as an athletic director. Those have all become the most important things he has to do, and we wanted to find out about some of those things.
So our interview with Bubba, we actually had a chance to catch up with him a little bit earlier today. His schedule made it so that we needed to speak to him earlier this morning. Had a chance to talk to him about a wide variety of subjects. Let's get to that conversation now, brought to you by Coca-Cola. We have spread out here on the Carolina Insider, making sure all three of us could be here, but at a distance as well. Of course, I'm still Jones, he's still Adam, and over there to my left is the athletic director here at the University of North Carolina, Bubba Cunningham. Our conversation with Bubba is brought to you by Coca-Cola. It tastes better together, and Coca-Cola is a proud partner of Carolina Athletics. Well, Bubba, a lot going on here recently, as I think I start every conversation with you these days that way. Give us an update on what's going on.
It's a strange time. Somebody said to me the other day that it's the 175th day of March. And
Is that a Thursday or a Friday?
It feels that way. I had no idea in retrospect how my year is marked by the sports seasons. And so when everything shut down in March, it feels like time has stood still since then. But some of the sports are back playing on the national basis, although last night was one of the most unique times in the history of our country. And what a difficult time. And just this morning, Mac Brown met with his team and had about a 10-minute talk about what happened last night. And we want to make sure that our players have a voice. So they had the big team meeting, and then he had individual meetings with their position coach and their players to really talk about what's on their mind. There's an awful lot of concern. The pandemic is one thing, but for African American, for blacks, for student athletes, they're really struggling in a lot of different ways, that being one of them. And I just give our coaches tremendous credit for getting into that environment immediately, tackling those very difficult issues. So in addition to trying to come back to play, they have all these other things going on in their lives. So just kudos to our coaches. We've been talking about it. We talked about the 3 E's and the 5 V's and things that we're trying to do to educate and to involve and to engage our student athletes. But we haven't been able to really put it into practice because the voting doesn't happen until later this year. And our coaches are right on top of it though. So again, we want them to express themselves. We want the communication between the team, between the coaches, and they're doing that. So that's what's going on from a social justice and racial issue today. And the other thing about that, it happens to be on Coach Brown's birthday.
That's right.
So we're celebrating a birthday today for him. He's got his hands full. He's as optimistic as he's ever been, getting our players back and getting to scrimmage a little bit this past week and preparing for the season. So we hope that happens. The presidents and the chancellors of our conference are still optimistic that it will. We hope that it does. We've seen spikes in positive cases on numerous campuses. Many campuses are starting to go remote, but we're still trying to have some type of student experience on the campus. Participation in sport. We have conference calls a couple times a week. The presidents have ACC calls at least once a week. So those things are continuing to move forward. But as we know, as much as it has kind of been the same, it seems to change daily. And the medical advice changes daily. I mean, just the CDC directives about reducing testing, has the medical community at odds with each other, saying, well, that's not a good idea. So it's really challenging for chancellors and presidents to open a campus, try to get the student athlete and the student experience going, but not have spikes in the positive rates that we can't handle. That's probably more than you wanted on the first question.
It's probably more than you want to deal with right now. Adam, I know you had something for Bubba.
You're currently dealing with about 4 or 5 different things that you've never really had to think about or thought would ever be a concern before. We're 2 weeks away or so from the first football game, and the folks watching don't know if they're going to be able to come watch the Tar Heels. Where do we stand in the process of whether or not fans will be allowed at Kenan Stadium, and how do you make those decisions?
Well, we recognize that that's a big challenge for the state, and so we follow the state guidance. We follow Orange County, and we've talked to Orange County very specifically about what it could look like in the stadium. But we understand that we're still in phase 2, and we're going to be there until September 11th, and I'm not sure if we're going to be there beyond that or not. But I think there's a high probability that we will not have any fans, at least in the month of September. We haven't asked the state for any special consideration. We're trying to see where the data goes, what is the state requirement at the time. And I could not be more thankful. A couple of weeks ago, we sent a notification to our season ticket holders and gave them 3 options. You could donate the money, you could roll it over to next year, or you could request a refund. And we've had about a third. And I can't thank our fans enough. I mean, that's about $1.4 million in donations to the athletic department of people that just said, look, we get it, we understand, we've already paid for the tickets, we probably can't go, or we don't want to go, keep the money. And that's tremendous because we're going to have a significant financial loss this year, and every little bit helps. And that's not a little bit, that's a lot. So thank you to all of those folks that were able to do that. But we will be televised. Hopefully this crew here has done a tremendous job in trying to keep people informed. And now they've been asked to produce live broadcasts for ESPN on the linear channel. So that's the first time we'll attempt it at football, and I've got every confidence in the world that they'll do a fantastic job doing that.
Bubba, a couple days ago, late last week, you ended up having to suspend athletic activities due to the spikes on campus. What went into that decision? Just what were those discussions like, and why was that ultimately the choice?
Well, again, we're trying to open the campus safely, and we experienced the exact same thing in July and June. We brought people back. You see a little bit of an outbreak, it spikes up, you quiet down the activities, everybody kind of regroups, and you go back to normal activity. We saw the exact same thing here. You bring 20,000 students back to campus, you're going to have positive cases. We experienced that. It now has leveled out a little bit. We're back to a little bit more normal behavior of the new normal. And we have de-densified campus, a word that none of us used 6 months ago. And so we are now in a position where the students here understand how significant it is to wear your mask all the time. And hopefully we can keep those numbers low. But you're seeing it at every college campus across the country. You come back, you see the spike, can you manage the peak, and then can you get back to some sense of new normal?
We had Dr. Sioka on the audio podcast last week, and I thought he did a really good job of helping us, not medical professionals, understand some of the medical details that you've had to deal with on a regular basis. When you have to explain to student athletes or to families of student athletes why they can be safer here while other students are at home, what's the reasoning behind that, and why might that work?
Well, I spent the night at the Holiday Inn Express last night. You can't, these are very serious issues, but if you don't have any sense of humor on it, it's going to drive you out of your mind. So anyhow, Dr. Sioka has actually been on most of those calls. We bring in the medical experts. I mean, I'm like you. He tells me, I hear it, I understand it, I think. I certainly don't know it the way he does. He's far better at explaining it. He has far more credibility with our parents. So when we need to really answer their question, we bring in the experts to answer the question. We do believe it's safer. We do believe we have incredible medical care. Our doctors, our trainers, the hospital here, the medical experts on this campus. So many of our students come from all kinds of different walks of life. And so we think having them here, having nutritionists, trainers, psychologists, everybody with eyes on them every day, that we can respond much quicker. So we do think it is a healthier, safer place for them. Not everyone agrees with that, I understand that, but that's what we believe.
Bubba, I know you have to plan and think about every possible scenario, just to at least be somewhat ready should it occur. Worst case scenario, if there is no football, what does that mean for Carolina athletics?
Well, as you know, we've talked about this a long time, for many, many years. We have 28 varsity programs. 2 of them generate more than we spend, so that's football and basketball. So the entire athletic department really hinges on ticket sales, television, and philanthropy. And so philanthropy has been terrific, but it's not going to sustain 28 programs for a long period of time. So what we have done is we finished our last fiscal year breaking even, exhausting all of our reserves because we had a dip in the revenue based on the basketball tournament. This fiscal year, we're going to dig a deep hole. We just hope it's not so deep we can't get out of it. The university has been terrific in working with us to say, okay, we understand where you are. And so you have your coaches here, you have your kids here, so we have these programs in place for this year. What we're looking at is fiscal year 22 and beyond. What does that look like at Carolina? What does Carolina athletics look like in the future? We have name, image, and likeness we have to worry about. We have the Alston case, which basically has gone to the Supreme Court of California, which now means that there's no limits on what we can provide from an educational standpoint. So we can provide additional funding for master's degrees, career development, things post-graduation, quite frankly. So that could be an additional expense that we really don't know where that's going. So I think we have to take a really long-term view of college athletics here at Carolina and on a national basis. So we want to continue to offer opportunities to play. We want to provide a great education while they're here, but we're trying to figure out what does that look like financially, and how can we support these students in the best way so that they can achieve the results that they want, both academically and athletically. So we're really taking a long-term view, and it'll probably take us 3 to 5 months to really figure that out. So maybe after the first of the year, we'll have a better plan of what 22 and beyond looks like.
You just did a very good job of explaining why football is so important to the overall picture. But as you said, there are 28 sports here at North Carolina. A lot of the fall sport possible opponents have fallen by the wayside over the last few weeks and months. Where do we stand broadly with sports other than football as we look towards the rest of the fall and the winter?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, we're wrestling with that today. There's a senior women's administrator call going on right now. We have an athletic director's call here in a couple of minutes. And we're talking about those. So you have field hockey, volleyball, the 2 soccers, cross country. Those are the sports that are waiting for some guidance. We have schedules in place. We have 10 games for volleyball, 6 games for soccer, 6 games for field hockey. But 80% of the 80% of the volleyball programs and the field hockey programs have already moved to the spring. So right now, the ACC, we're going to attempt to play in the fall. Now, the presidents may change that, and we may change our advice and recommendations to the chancellors. We might say, look, the NCAA has moved their championships to the spring. Let's just go ahead and move our competition to the spring. The hope was we'd have more teams playing this fall. But as new information is coming, higher test rates, higher positive test results, maybe that doesn't make sense. So, I mean, you're asking questions in real time. We're trying to answer them in real time. The presidents meet later this week. We'll have more clarity as time goes on. But what Kevin has stressed the entire time is patience. Are we patient enough to look at the data and then make decisions? It's really hard. Everybody wants clarity, but the only thing we can tell you right now is you can't do something. If you're willing to wait, you might be able to play. But boy, that's driving everybody out of their mind. Everybody's patience is about this then.
All right, one more tough question, at least for me. So the NCAA came out and said that if you played in the fall, it wouldn't affect your eligibility moving forward. So I want to make sure you understand this the same way, at least that I understand it. Does that mean that anybody can play and basically it's a free pass eligibility-wise moving forward?
It is. So you play in this fall, you don't lose your year of competition. They're going to extend your clock as well, is what I understand. The only complication, the nuance in there is, let's say volleyball. If we play 10 volleyball games in the fall, they're allowed to play 28 games in a year. That would mean that in the spring, they'd only be allowed to play 18 games. There's also a number of days that you're allowed to practice for 20 hours and play. So every time we use a day in the fall, that's a day that they would be using in the spring. Probably more NCAA rules than you want, but to answer your first question, yes, if you play, you're still eligible next year.
As you can tell, Bubba has a few things on his plate these days that he's trying to figure out, so we definitely appreciate him giving us some time today. Bubba, always great to see you. Thank you so much for your time, your leadership, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks, Jones, I appreciate it. Adam, always good to see you.
Thank you.
Boy, great stuff and informative stuff from Bubba Cunningham earlier this morning. We appreciate the athletic director joining us here on the Carolina Insider. All right, let's get to our social drive. We're going to take a bounce around the social media world and find out all kinds of things happening around Carolina athletics. And Adam, this starts with something much larger than Carolina athletics and much larger than just athletics. But of course, we all saw yesterday, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks, that all NBA playoff games were postponed, with the players boycotting playing due to social injustice and continued issues with police brutality, this time in Wisconsin. And there were some Tar Heels involved, both with the Bucks in starting that, and then some Tar Heels reacted on social media as well.
There was some talk during the pandemic that the last Dean Smith coached player had retired as Vince Carter had retired. It doesn't matter. The Dean Smith influence continues. As you saw last night, George Karl sending out a tweet talking about what Coach Smith would think about everything that was going on. Remember, Marvin Williams was in the room with the Bucks when all these decisions were being made, and an important part of that monumental decision. And then Kenny Smith last night on Inside the NBA had a few words as well.
I think the biggest thing now is to kind of, as a black man, as a former player, I think it's best for me to support the players and just not be here tonight. And figure out what happens after that. Yeah, I just don't feel equipped to do that.
And I respect that.
So obviously some very poignant moments there from Kenny Smith and others yesterday, and certainly this is a story that isn't over today. It is one that will continue as we try to continue the discussion and figure this thing out. And Adam, no easy transition from that to anything else, a very serious issue, but we'll go to something a little more lighthearted, and that is on the baseball diamond. In fact, a former guest on the Carolina Insider audio podcast, Zach Gallen, a starter for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and boy, Zach is on quite a roll at the beginning of his major league career.
It was just a few months we were sitting in there in Pod World headquarters with Zach Gallen, and now today he's on the mound starting against the Rockies this evening, trying to set a major league record. He's given up 3 or fewer earned runs in the first 21 starts of his major league career. He already has the National League record. If he can do it again today, he'll have the major league record.
Let's go from there to Carolina football, and so often I think fans only see these young men and women as the players on the field or on the court or in the pool or whatever their individual sport may be, but these young people are so much more than just a football player or a softball player or whatever. And another nice reminder of that this week, Adam, when Tamon Fox, of course an outstanding defensive end / outside linebacker for the Carolina football team, showed off some of his artwork, and he lamented the fact that he's not quite finished with some of these works, but his talent obviously on display.
Look at how good those are.
Yeah.
That's Jake Lawler in kind of the lower part of the screen.
Not the Joker there. That's not Jake.
Right, not the one that says Joker. That's an unfinished portrait of Jake Lawler, another former Carolina pod guest. But just an incredible job by Tamon Fox, who just in his spare time is able to do better paintings than I've ever done in my life or could do if I spent the rest of my life. So great job by him. Looking forward to having him on and talking to him more about that talent as well as his football talent. There hasn't been a lot of sports, so people like Tamon have had time to do some paintings. Other people have used this time to, maybe like Jones, practice their free throw skills in the driveway. So there's a 7-year-old in Chapel Hill named Reef Barrett, big Nasir Little fan. And Reef wanted to become a better free throw shooter, and he wasn't sure how to do it, so his dad, clutch dad move right here, just reach out to Nasir Little and get a little advice on how to be a better free throw shooter. So that's what the Barrett family did.
What's up, Reef? Nasir Little here. I just wanted to say, what's up, man? I wanted to tell you, keep working hard, keep dreaming big, and do anything you can to achieve those dreams, man. The most impossible ones I seem unlikely to get are the best ones to receive. What's up, Reef? Nasir Little here. I just wanted to say, what's up, man? I wanted to tell you, keep working hard, keep dreaming big. And
If you ever wonder what kind of impact sports figures have, look at Reef's face. It obviously worked. We're not going to make you watch all 102 free throws that Reef made consecutively, but clearly
Settle in for the next 20 minutes.
Nasir's advice had some impact. Let's go to the Barrett driveway where Reef is up into the triple digits of made consecutive free throws.
There's 102.
Oh my God! Holy cow! 102! Oh my gosh!
Great stuff there. Obviously, the celebration not for the miss. It was for the 102 makes before finally a miss.
It was probably the fact that Reef was wearing his Nasir Little jersey. I think that's what did it.
Let's go from there, from men's basketball to women's basketball. And former Tar Heel student athlete Jessica Breland, who, when Jessica was a women's basketball player here at Carolina, was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma. She recently submitted something for the My Kicks, My Cause campaign. You see here, Adam, her shoes with a little bit of Tar Heel flair.
I like this move that a lot of sports have done where players are customizing their shoes, gets a chance to get a little personality into it. And of course, Jessica Breland carrying Carolina with her on beyond Chapel Hill into her professional career as well.
Speaking of shoes, Carolina football made some news on the social media landscape this week as they showed off their new kicks for the 2020 season. And certainly some attractive looks there for the Tar Heels coming up. And I got to tell you, the amazing part about these shoes that we have found is that they can make absolutely anybody look like a pretty good athlete out there. Anybody can look like a football player with these bad boys on.
I feel incredibly fast And I would also like to issue a formal apology to Jordan Brand for desecrating their shoes. I personally think I pull them off. Some people might differ, I'm not sure.
Jordan Brand's like, never let this footage see the light of day. You want to race Daz Newsome in these or something, Adam? I ran a mile and I'm dribbling a basketball.
It's going to take me about 10 minutes to get my feet off the desk, but once that happens, I'm ready to race.
All right, we'll get the heavy equipment in to lift these bad boys up. Make sure Adam hopefully is nice and stretched before next week where he can join us. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show, and we look forward to seeing you next week here on the Carolina Insider.